The most painful moment for a narcissist isn't when you leave them, it's when they realize they've destroyed the only real love they ever had. It's not when you block them on every platform, not when you vanish from their life. It's the moment they realize every power play, every manipulative trick, every time they tried to prove they were winning became the very reason they lost something money, charm, or power could never buy back: true love. That moment shatters the fake world they built. And the worst part for them? It's not your hatred, not your anger. It's your peace, your calm indifference that forces them to see the power they thought they had was just an illusion. In this video, we're going to explore what really happens inside a narcissist's mind when the mask falls off. Why don't they fear losing you, yet panic when they realize they've destroyed their only chance at genuine love? And more importantly, why is your silence the strongest strike, the one they'll never forget? If you've ever been caught in a narcissistic spiral and want to understand their psychology at the core, as well as how you can turn pain into power, stay until the end. Because this isn't just a story about them. It's the key to stepping out of the darkness and reclaiming your true freedom. Now, let's begin with the first part, the illusion of power, the trap they set for themselves. They always tell themselves, as long as I'm smart enough, as long as I stay in control, no one will ever leave me. That's the biggest illusion a narcissist lives by. They believe power's in their hands, that they can bend someone else's emotions like a puppet, a warm embrace today, a cold indifference tomorrow. Everything calculated to keep you confused, doubting yourself, and ultimately dependent on them. But what's the truth? That's not power. That's fear wearing a mask, a primal fear, fear of abandonment, fear of becoming invisible, fear of ceasing to exist in someone else's world without creating chaos. From the outside, they look like the ones in control, charming, clever, masters at reading your emotions. But in reality, it's just a flawless mask. Behind it lies a soul that constantly whispers, "If I'm not in control, I'll be forgotten." To keep the act going, they use their favorite tricks. Love bombing. A downpour of sweet words, grand gestures so dazzling you start believing this love was meant to be. Sudden silence, creating a void that throws you into chaos. What did I do wrong? Gaslighting, bit by bit, making you doubt your memory, your feelings, your worth. It's a psychological chess game, calculated to perfection. And every time you run to them for reassurance, for validation, they see it as a victory. In their world, power equals making you need them more each day. But here's what they'll never admit. Power built on dependence is never safe. It's like building a castle on sand. From the outside, it might look magnificent, but inside, it takes just one wave to bring it all crashing down. And that wave is the very truth they keep running from. The harder they try to control others, the more they expose the chaos inside themselves. You see, a truly strong person doesn't need power games to prove their worth. Only those carrying an emptiness inside seek to fill it by dominating others. That's why they never stop manipulating. Because if they did, they'd have to face the truth. Behind all that glitter and glamour is an ego full of cracks. But then something happens they never saw coming. Real love enters the picture. A love that doesn't need drama, doesn't need games, doesn't need fabricated highs and lows. And that becomes the greatest threat to a narcissist. Why? Because true love is a mirror that exposes everything. It reflects the shadows they've buried: impatience, insecurity, an inability to love authentically. And they hate that. Hate it so much that they'd rather destroy everything than take off the mask they've worn all their life. That's where the tragedy begins, because no illusion can survive when it's exposed to the light of truth. In the next part, we'll uncover the harsh reality, why true love becomes the ultimate threat, and why they choose to lose it even when it's their one chance to be loved for real. When true love becomes a threat. Love should be something everyone longs for, but to a narcissist it feels like the most dangerous enemy. Sounds paradoxical, right? Yet it's true. Imagine this: you give them something every heart desires, a love that is pure, without calculation, without conditions. A love that doesn't demand proof of worth, doesn't force anyone to wear a mask to be accepted. That love arrives like a gentle breeze, touching the deepest part of the soul. But for them, that very breeze shakes the entire fortress they've spent years building. Why? Because true love demands something they're never willing to give: authenticity and vulnerability. True love says, take off the mask. Let me see the real you. But for a narcissist, that's not an invitation, it's a threat. The thought of exposing those cracks, those insecurities hidden under their polished armor, terrifies them. So what do? They destroy it. They turn a beautiful relationship into a battlefield for power. Love is no longer connection, it becomes a weapon for control, a loyalty test. If you love me, you'll give up your dreams. If you truly care, you'll endure my silence without complaint. These demands aren't because they love you too much. On the contrary, it's because they're afraid of loving the right way. Afraid love will force them to shed the armor they've worn to survive in this world. In their eyes, love isn't a shared space between two equals. It's a loyalty exam, a game where whoever bows the most loses. And in that game they must win. They need your submission to silence the deepest fear within. I'm not enough. I'm not worthy of love unless I'm in control. Do you see the tragedy? The one thing that could save them, a love that is true, patient, and forgiving, is the very thing they can't accept. Because to embrace it, they must face their greatest fear, themselves. When you give them true love, you're not just giving warmth, you're holding up a mirror. And in that mirror, they see the emptiness, the facade they've hidden beneath layer after layer of masks. Facing that truth sends them into panic. They feel threatened not because you did something wrong, but because your love is too real. It doesn't allow them to keep performing. It forces them to become their true self, and that's something they'll never dare to do. So they choose to break it. They twist love into a tool to protect their ego. They make you believe the collapse is your fault. And then they leave or push you away just to avoid the hardest lesson of their life, that real love can never live in the shadow of power. This is the turning point. Because when they destroy true love, they don't just lose you. They lose their one chance to experience the healing they've unconsciously searched for all their life. And that wound will stay with them forever, no matter how many masks they wear afterward. When manipulation starts destroying your sense of self, after that dreamy honeymoon phase, after all those promises that felt unbreakable, a quiet shift begins. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, but it's enough to make your heart tremble. The sweet messages suddenly disappear without explanation. The affectionate words are now mixed with subtle, cutting remarks like, "You did well, but I think you could do better." Or those moments when they suddenly go cold and distant, as if you committed some grave mistake, even though you have no idea what you did wrong. That's not random. It's a strategy. A narcissist knows that as long as you're confident, you're hard to control. So they start planting the smallest seeds of doubt in your mind. Little by little, they shake the very foundation you once trusted. It's a cruel psychological mechanism. When attention and validation are suddenly withdrawn, your brain interprets it as a survival threat. And to regain that sense of safety, you start doing exactly what they want, trying harder, enduring more, sacrificing more just to reclaim the love you feel slipping away. Manipulation begins with the smallest gestures, a compliment laced with criticism, an embrace followed by cold indifference. But its effect is anything but small. It slowly dismantles the way you see yourself. You start asking questions like, did I do something wrong? Am I just not good enough? And every time you doubt yourself, they gain more power. This is the biggest trap. You shift from loving to depending. You start living for their smile, craving that rare compliment like a reward. And they know it. They carefully orchestrate this rhythm of give and withdraw to keep you trapped in their orbit for as long as possible. One of the most classic weapons in this phase is gaslighting, manipulating your perception. It's not just denying the truth, it's rewriting your reality. When you say, "You said that, and it hurt me," They reply, "You're imagining things." Or, "I never said that. You're being too sensitive." And when this happens often enough, you stop trusting your feelings, your memory. You start relying on them as your only compass, even though that compass is leading you deeper into the fog. Understand this: when someone loses faith in themselves, they become a puppet in the manipulator's hands. And a narcissist knows this better than anyone. But here's the irony. They think they're winning. They think their power is unshakable. But in reality, every lie, every manipulative move only does one thing. It erodes the single foundation that keeps any relationship alive: trust and genuine love. When doubt overwhelms your heart, love is no longer love. It becomes a negotiation. You don't love them for who they are, you love because you crave that fleeting sense of peace they once gave you, the same feeling they now dangle like bait to keep you hooked. And that's when something strange happens. In the chaos they've created, a spark of awakening begins to flicker. You start asking yourself, if this love is real, why do I feel so exhausted? If I truly matter, why do I have to beg for scraps of affection? The answers don't come all at once, but that tiny seed of doubt will grow. And once you realize the truth that love can never survive in the shadow of control, every bit of power they thought they had starts slipping through their fingers. This is what a narcissist never expects. They believe manipulation will keep you bound to them. But in reality, every time they break your trust, they're digging the grave for the very relationship they're trying to control. Love or possession? In healthy relationships, love means growing together. It gives you the freedom to become the best version of yourself, not a replica of someone else. But in a narcissist's world, that concept is completely distorted. To them, love is not a connection between two equal souls. It's an unspoken contract: I'll make you feel special as long as you agree to give up your identity and orbit around me. This is when love transforms into sophisticated possession. They won't say outright, "You belong to me." Instead, they wrap it in words that sound irresistibly sweet. "I don't want to lose you for even a second." Sounds romantic, doesn't it? But behind it is a hidden message: I can't tolerate you having your own life, your own joy, or anything outside my control. Here's what you need to understand. Possession isn't about loving more, it's about fearing more. A narcissist fears being replaced, fears not being the center of the universe. And to silence that fear, they try to turn you into property, a trophy to showcase their power. To do this, they use three common tactics. Restricting your personal freedom. They get upset when you spend time with friends or pursue your passions. Guilt tripping. They make you believe any joy outside of them is betrayal. Double standards. They can do whatever they want, but you can't. In their eyes, love isn't about sharing, it's an endless loyalty test. How much your love depends on how much of yourself you're willing to give up to keep them happy. And here's the tragedy: they confuse submission with love. When you agree to endure silence, tolerate sarcasm, or sacrifice your dreams, they see it as proof of your love. But in reality, it's just proof that their control is working. This turns the relationship into an invisible prison. At first, you walked in believing in a great love, but slowly the bars go up: unspoken rules, unreasonable boundaries, and demands disguised as "because I love you, Gio," when in truth, it's all about power. Real love never requires you to sacrifice your identity to survive. It respects boundaries, honors differences, and nourishes freedom. But for a narcissist, your freedom is the greatest threat to their power. Notice this. When you laugh with friends, they seem irritated. When you achieve something, they downplay it or twist it into their own victory. When you start setting boundaries, they become angry, even desperate. Why? Because deep down they believe, if you can be happy without me, I lose everything. That's the core of possession, a fear of losing power dressed up as passionate love. You know the most ironic part. The harder they try to keep you close through control, the further they push you away. Because once love is twisted into power, it's no longer love. It's captivity, a prison decorated with sweet words. And then, at some point, you start asking, is this really love? Or just a game to prove he can't be left behind? When that question echoes in your mind, a door begins to open. Because true love never asks you to give up yourself. It doesn't turn you into a shadow. It doesn't demand you trade your freedom for a fake sense of safety. And once you understand that, their game is nearly over. Because power built on control only exists as long as you believe it's love. When the truth comes to light, the entire castle they've built starts to crumble brick by brick. In the next part, we'll uncover a weapon they think is unbeatable: silence, and why, when you understand its true nature, you can turn it into a double-edged sword. Silence, the narcissist's ultimate weapon. If words can make you smile, silence can bring you to your knees. And no one understands that better than a narcissist. When all their other tactics fail to create chaos, they pull out their most powerful card: silence. And don't mistake this for a cooling off period. No. This is a calculated strategy designed to shake you to your core. Their silence isn't accidental. It's intentional, planned, scripted. They know the human mind hates a void. When we don't have answers, we start creating them. You'll ask yourself, what did I do wrong? Do they still love me? Is this the end? And while you're drowning in those questions, they sit back and revel in the ultimate power, the power of knowing that one text, one call from them could light up or destroy your entire day. Here's the psychology behind this game. The brain treats uncertainty like a survival threat. When the person you love suddenly disappears emotionally, your mind hits the emergency alarm. You can't focus, you can't sleep, you have one mission: restore balance. And so, you do exactly what they want. You text, you call, you apologize, even when you have no idea what you're apologizing for. What do they want? They want to see you chase. Because in their mind, chasing equals control. But here's the dark side of this tactic. It doesn't just manipulate your behavior, it rewires your beliefs about your own worth. Every time you apologize for something that never happened, you carve a toxic message deeper into your mind: I need to do more to be loved. And once that message takes root, they don't need to say a word. Their silence becomes an invisible whip, controlling you from a distance without lifting a finger. But here's what they don't know. This weapon is a double-edged sword. It only cuts deep when you fear it, when you believe their silence defines your worth. But once you understand the truth that silence isn't power, it's immaturity. An inability to communicate, its magic disappears. Remember this. Silence doesn't make you small. It only reveals they lack the courage to face the truth. Silence doesn't signal your guilt. It mirrors the insecurity they hide inside. A healthy person uses silence to reflect, to heal. A narcissist uses it to punish, to maintain control. And that control only works when you react. This is the turning point. When you stop reacting, the game ends. When their text no longer makes your heart race, when their disappearance no longer robs you of sleep, that's when their power collapses like a house of cards. A narcissist fears your silence more than anything. Because your silence isn't a weapon, it's a declaration. You're no longer the center of my universe. And to them, that's not just losing a person, it's watching their entire illusionary world fall apart. The real breaking point, when your peace becomes their worst nightmare. A narcissist's breaking point doesn't come from a screaming match. It doesn't happen when you shout all your pain into their face. No, it comes in complete silence, when you no longer react, no longer beg, no longer cry, but quietly walk away with peace in your heart. To them, your anger is still a lifeline. Your tears are still a source of power. Because as long as you're arguing, trying to prove your worth, craving to be understood, it means you're still on the stage they built. And that's all they need. But when you stop, when you refuse to play the script anymore, something terrifying happens in their mind. They lose the mirror they need to exist. A narcissist cannot survive in indifference. They live off reactions. The stronger the reaction, the greater their sense of control. But when there's nothing, no reaction at all, the illusion they've worn for so long begins to shatter. They're forced to face a truth they've always feared. I'm no longer the center. I'm not special. I'm just a person with nothing but emptiness inside. This is the real breaking point, not because they lost you, but because they lost control over you. They can handle hatred, because hatred is still a connection. They can handle anger, because anger still makes them feel important. But they cannot handle your peace. Peace is the final verdict. You have no power in my life anymore. And in that moment, all their tricks become useless. They try the sweet words from before, but you're no longer moved. They try guilt trips, but you've learned to tell the difference between truth and manipulation. They try creating drama, but you have no interest in playing their game anymore. What they never expected is this: your silence is louder than any accusation. It doesn't scream, it doesn't prove anything. It simply says, You're no longer my story. Why does this destroy them? Because a narcissist's entire identity is built on the gaze of others. When you stop seeing them as a god, when you stop reacting to their chaos, they no longer know who they are. And that emptiness, that's what they fear more than death itself. This is when panic sets in. They'll do anything to pull you back. They'll beg with promises of change. They'll attack with blame, smear your name. Or they'll rush to find a new supply to convince themselves they still matter. But no matter what they do, there's one truth they can't escape. The power they once had over you is dead. And that death didn't come from revenge, it came from something far simpler. You chose peace over chaos. Etch this in your mind. You don't need to prove them wrong. You don't need an apology to be free. True freedom comes when you understand that not reacting is the strongest reaction of all. In the next part, we'll dive into the narcissist's deepest fear, the fear of being forgotten. An invisible sentence they'll never have the strength to endure. Their greatest fear, being forgotten. If you had to choose the most devastating punishment for a narcissist, it wouldn't be hatred. It wouldn't be harsh criticism. It would be being completely forgotten. You might ask, why is being forgotten scarier than being hated? The answer lies in their core. They survive on attention. Every power play, every manipulation tactic serves one purpose: to be seen, to be acknowledged, to feel important. To them, even your anger is a form of connection. When you argue, cry, or lash out, a message echoes in their mind. I'm still the center of this world. But what happens when you stop reacting? When their name no longer appears in your conversations? When you don't look back, not even once? That's not just losing a lover, that's losing the mirror that reflects the ego they've spent their life constructing. Picture their world as a stage. They are the lead actor, and you are the most important audience. Every line, every act, every dramatic scene is crafted to capture your gaze. But then one day, the audience stands up and walks out. The lights are still on, the stage is still there, but no one cares anymore. And that's when the truth hits. No one is watching. No one sees me as important anymore. That's the invisible sentence they were never prepared to face. Why does this send them into panic? Because their entire identity isn't built from within, it's patched together from the outside. When you erase them from your story, they're forced to confront the question they've been running from their entire life. Who am I when there's no one to reflect my image back at me? And the answer terrifies them. No one. That emptiness, the void they've been filling with control, with praise, with power, is now fully exposed. And it's not just uncomfortable, it's an identity collapse. So they'll do anything to fight it. Some will try to pull you back with promises of change, with tearful apologies. Others will launch smear campaigns, painting you as the villain in the story they tell the world, just to cling to the illusion that they still matter. And if all else fails, they'll rush to find a new supply, not out of love, but out of a desperate need for a new mirror to reflect their false image. But deep down, they know this truth. Every time they are forgotten, a piece of their power dies forever. Here's what you need to understand. Your forgetting them is not revenge. It's the natural result of choosing peace and freedom. Because when you've learned that love isn't a game, that your worth doesn't depend on someone else's approval, you'll see no reason to return to that stage. And that is the greatest victory you can ever achieve, not by crushing them in a loud battle, but by quietly walking away and letting your silence speak the message. You have no power here anymore. You're just a closed chapter. When love becomes a sentence. Love for us is a gift, but for a narcissist, true love becomes the harshest sentence of all. Sounds irrational, right? Yet that is their ultimate tragedy. From the very beginning, what they seek isn't love, it's worship. They want you to see them as a savior, as the center of the universe. They crave admiration, not understanding. Why? Because real love requires vulnerability. It requires removing the perfect mask, and that is something they cannot do. So when you love them with sincerity, when you love fully, unconditionally, without games or power struggles, that love doesn't make them happy. It terrifies them. Why? Because true love is an unyielding mirror. It doesn't reflect the image they've crafted. It exposes the emptiness they've spent their life trying to hide, insecurity, weakness, the fear of abandonment. Do you see the irony? The one thing that could heal them is the very thing they cannot accept. Because accepting love means surrendering control. It means letting you in, allowing you to see the shadows they've fought so hard to conceal. And for them, that feels like a death sentence to the ego they worship. So what do? They destroy that love. They twist it, distort it, turn it into a weapon for control. If you love me, you'll do this. If you really care, you'll prove it by giving up yourself. Those words are not proof of deep love. They are proof of a deep fear of losing power. And when you refuse to play, they become ruthless, not because they hate you, but because they hate the weakness that true love forces them to feel. From here, love meant to be the safest place becomes a battlefield. No more moments of connection, only invisible tests. Who will give in more? Who will endure longer? Who will prove their love through unreasonable sacrifice? In this game, they always need to win. But that victory is a trap, because every time they win, they push you further away, killing the only thing that could save them, genuine connection. Picture this: true love is like a lamp lighting up a dark room. You bring them that light, hoping it will warm them, but they shut their eyes, smash the lamp, and run. Because to them, the light doesn't bring peace, it only reminds them how long they've lived in darkness. And this is their ultimate sentence. They can seek dozens of new relationships, but everyone will repeat the same script. They can wear perfect roles in front of the world, but when the curtain falls, they face the same emptiness. They can deceive everyone, but they can never escape this truth. I once had real love, and I destroyed it. That is the scar no one sees, but they carry for life. Not because they loved you more than anyone else, but because you are the only proof they ever had a chance to be truly loved, and they threw it away for an illusion called power. When the mask falls. From the very beginning, everything you saw was just a carefully scripted role. They appeared perfect, confident, charming, funny at the right moments, caring just enough to make you believe this was destiny. And you believed. Who wouldn't believe when standing in front of someone who seems to know everything you've ever wanted? But it was only a social mask, a product crafted through years of manipulation. It was designed to seduce, to addict, to make you forget one truth. Behind that glittering facade lies a chaotic soul. How strong is this mask? Only until the first demand of real love appears, the demand for authenticity. The demand to take down the walls, to admit weakness, to let you see their true self. And that's when everything begins to crack. You'll notice the first signs. Irrational anger when you ask about their true feelings. Sharp criticism when you talk about boundaries and respect. Cold silences when you long for connection. These aren't random reactions. They are the ego's survival reflex. They believe that if the mask falls, they'll be abandoned, judged, diminished. And in that fear, they do what they know best: attack, control, or run. And then, when their usual tricks silence, blame shifting, manipulation stop working, the mask starts to fall. Piece by piece, you see clearly what you once suspected. The person you loved was never truly them. It was an illusion. They may have wanted to be the person you loved, but they didn't know how. And when the truth comes out, they face their deepest fear, being seen with no armor left. This is the most chaotic moment for them. Because when the mask falls, they lose two things: the perfect image in your eyes and the power to control the relationship. And for a narcissist, losing power feels like losing life itself. You might see two opposite reactions at this stage. Some become aggressive, trying to humiliate you to save their ego. Others beg, promise to change, paint a beautiful future just to pull you back. But no matter which road they take, the goal is always the same: to put the mask back on. They don't want to heal. They want to restore the stage you just tore down. This is when you need to be most clear-eyed. Because if you believe in promises of change without looking at reality, you'll return to the same cycle where everything starts over, only now you're more exhausted than before. The painful truth is this: a narcissist doesn't fear losing you. They fear losing the role you gave them. They don't cry for love, they cry because their mask has no audience. And here's the greatest paradox: you fell in love with a fictional character, and the only real thing in this relationship is the pain you feel. But don't forget, when the mask falls, it's not just an ending. It's a beginning. Because when you see the truth, you can walk off that stage and start writing a story where you are the author, not a character in someone else's game. the moment you're happy without them. This is the final blow to a narcissist's ego, the moment they see you happy without them. Not when you cry, not when you're angry, not even when you argue to save the relationship. Those reactions to them are still proof they hold power over your life. But when you're calm, when you smile not to prove anything, but simply because you're living your truth, that's when their entire world collapses. Why does this hurt them so much? Because a narcissist survives on the illusion that you can't live without them. They want to believe they're the sun in your universe, that every bit of your happiness revolves around them. When you suffer after they leave, they feel powerful. When you beg, they feel invincible. But when you choose a different path without them, and you still shine, still laugh, still live fully, it shatters the story they've always told themselves. No one can leave me and be happier without me. Picture this. They thought they were the best chapter in your book, but now you've written a new chapter more beautiful, more free, and they're not in it. To them, this isn't just losing a relationship. It's losing the starring role in the story they believed they'd dominate forever. What happens in their mind now? They feel betrayed not because you betrayed love, but because you betrayed the role they cast you in, the dependent one, the one who would stay no matter what. They feel humiliated because your happiness is a mirror reflecting the truth. All their veiled threats, without me, you're nothing, were nothing but illusions. They feel panic because if you can break free and thrive, it means they were never as powerful as they believed. And here's the paradox: the happier you are, the more they want you back. Not out of love, but out of a desperate need to restore their crumbling illusion of power. They'll try every trick, sweet apologies, promises of change, even lies about their own life to make you think no one's happier than me. But here's what they'll never admit: they can't stand the truth that you're free. That freedom proves they're not the center, that they were never the irreplaceable one they claimed to be. And for a narcissist, losing that position hurts more than any wound. And what about you? This moment isn't about revenge. Don't turn your happiness into a weapon to prove something, because if you do, you're still playing on their stage. Live well, but live for you. Let your smile come from real peace, not from trying to make anyone jealous. Because true victory isn't when they suffer because of you, it's when you no longer care what they think. Here's the message you need to engrave in your soul. Freedom doesn't come when they change. Freedom comes when you decide you don't need their approval to be happy. You don't need to prove your worth by becoming perfect. You are enough, even if they never saw it. In the final part, we'll talk about the most important truth: what does real victory look like? And how can you walk away without looking back, without guilt, without fear? The true victory. At this point, you might ask, how do I know I've truly won? Is it when they come back begging? Is it when they regret everything and admit you were the only one who ever loved them? Or is it when they collapse under the weight of the loneliness they created for themselves? No, real victory has nothing to do with them. It doesn't come from revenge. It doesn't come from proving who's right or wrong. True victory begins when you realize one simple, powerful truth. You don't need anyone else to validate your worth. A narcissist wants you to believe your happiness depends on them. And every time you argue, beg, or try to prove your love, you unknowingly reinforce that belief in their mind. But the moment you choose to walk away, not with noise, not with drama, but with a quiet decision for peace, you've already won. Victory isn't a single moment. It's a journey. It's the journey from chaos to calm. From being haunted by the question, why did they do this, to no longer caring about the answer. From feeling small to standing tall and saying, I am enough even when I stand alone. It's a journey where, with every step, you reclaim a piece of yourself they once tried to distort. You start doing small but meaningful things. Smiling at a peaceful morning, no longer fearing a cold text might appear. Eating a meal without judgment hanging over you. Looking in the mirror and seeing someone whole, stronger than ever. True victory doesn't need a stage. The narcissist craves drama. They want a grand finale where they're still the star no matter how the story ends. But you don't need that script. You don't need to prove you're better than them. You don't need them to know you're happy. Because real happiness needs no audience. It only needs you living fully, living true to your own worth. Remember this. The You didn't lose because you loved the wrong person. You win because you had the courage to love and the courage to walk away when that love became unhealthy. You're not weak because you fell into the cycle. You're strong because you found your way out. And you don't need them to pay the price, because the greatest price they'll pay is living their life in the shadow of their ego while you step into the light. What about them? Lump them. They might find someone new, repeat the same cycle. They might try to craft a picture-perfect life to prove you meant nothing. But the truth, every relationship they enter will carry your ghost, the person who gave them a chance at real love, and the one they lost forever. But that no longer matters, because your story isn't about them anymore. What is your victory? It's when you sleep through the night without dreaming of them. When you look back at the past without pain. When you can say, "I'm grateful for what happened, because it taught me I deserve better." That's a quiet victory, but it echoes louder than any revenge, because it doesn't just end a relationship. It breaks a toxic cycle and opens the door to a new life, a life you own. And if today you're at the beginning where pain still clings to you, where fear still whispers in the dark, trust me, one day you'll look back and smile, not because they're suffering, but because you're free. Not because they lost, but because you chose yourself. And when that day comes, you'll understand. True victory is when you no longer need to prove anything to anyone. You just live in peace and happiness on your own terms. Thank you for staying until the end of this video. If today's story touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so more people can find strength in their own journey. And if you're walking this path, leave a heart in the comments to tell the world. I am whole. I am free. See you in the next video.